Welcome to Beyond the Frontline podcast, where your hosts, U.S. Air Force veterans Donna Hoffmeyer and Jay Johnson, will help you transition from the front line to the home front. Listen every other Wednesday as they will bring great conversations, resources, tips, and feel-good stories that will resonate and relate. Now, here's your hosts, Donna Hoffmeyer and Jay Johnson.
Hello. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Beyond the Front Lines. My name is Jay Johnson, one of your co-hosts for this podcast, and I am excited, as always, to be sitting here in studio with the one, the only, no longer what we used to refer to her, but now the new, the only Donna Hoffmeyer.
You didn't say Queen.
I'm not going to say Queen anymore.
I forgot my shirt.
Oh, don't wear the shirt.
I keep forgetting to wear it. It's a baseball shirt, and it says Queen on it.
Those that are following us, they knew without anything having to be said, but you still brought it in. They're like, he's not going to say Queen, and then you said it.
Because it's my feel good.
It's fun. Look, you've been out, you and family have been out gallivanting around the world again. What's going on with you guys?
Yes, we were on spring break, and we were in North Carolina, and apparently we picked the right state to go in, because when we left what was supposed to be warm San Antonio, you guys got a cold
We had
snap.
one last little,
I had friends that were actually, he takes his daughter and they go tenting, like camping in tents over a spring break, and they went to Big Bend. They go there frequently.
West Texas.
Yeah, they're in West Texas, and they went the weekend before, that first weekend of spring break. And then the following weekend, they got a big snowstorm. And he's like, well, that would have been really rough.
Miserable. Yeah, North Carolina was nice, though. So you missed the cold front here. And I think it was cold probably a little bit north.
It was chilly.
I was in Virginia for a little bit of the time.
It was chilly. I mean, we were like 30s in the morning and highs of 50s to 60s. But, God, it's a dry air. So it's so much nicer. Besides that, you feel like you're dust. But, I mean, I constantly felt like my skin was like lizard skin. But I didn't have that damp, wet feeling.
So I'm just going to clarify to our listeners, those of you in North Carolina, she did not refer to you as lizards.
No,
I'm not saying.
Like what? Torque. Anyway, moving forward, what's up with you?
Normal, just busy and running around myself. And it's good. I'm ready for spring weather and rustic camping. Going to do some of that soon ourselves.
We have to give a late shout out. Your daughter had a birthday.
She did. She was big 17 yesterday. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Hard to believe. Where did the time go?
Happy birthday, Sora.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good stuff.
By the time this comes out, it'll be a lot later, but the intent was there. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's kind of you to remember that and say that. That's fun.
Yep. All good there. So, all right, let's roll into what we're talking about.
Yeah, we've got
today.
A good guest, as always. I feel like I say that every time we do this, but it's true. We have good guests.
She's a hoot because...
A hoot.
A hoot.
All right.
Yeah, it must be an East Coast thing.
It's an East Coast thing.
So when I usually will like pre-interview, just to have them understand what's going on.
I just randomly pick people and you actually conduct many interviews before.
I always find it goes quicker. It's a little quicker. But anyways, her and I ended up on hour and a half or 2 hours. She's hysterical.
I can't wait.
She's a badass.
So we'll hear some of this.
I got to tell you about her and I'm going to read this, but then I'm going to tell you where the badass part is. So she has worked with Veteran Treatment Court. Well, I should say the name first, right?
Yeah, they want to know who we're talking to.
Laura Balo. And she, right now, is the Comal County Veteran Treatment Court Coordinator.
Nice.
Okay. She's worked with Veteran Treatment Court for almost 6 years in many different capacities. So she started as a military veteran peer coordinator. And as you know, we interviewed Mike Fogarty, who is actually the current one, right?
That's right.
And then she works, and she was coordinating the mentor program. And then she moved on to be a case manager for the Hays County Veterans Treatment Court. And now she's a Veteran Treatment Court Coordinator for Comal County. Plus, she's actually a veteran herself. She's current in the Navy Reserves for the last 15 years. But here's the badass part.
Oh, that wasn't it? What you just described?
No.
Oh, there's more.
No.
But wait.
The badass part is that she has 6 kids and 2 6-month-old twins.
Oh, wow.
And she's doing most of it on her own because her dear husband works in solar energy, is out of state most of the month.
I'm almost
so she's handling all of this with little babies at home getting no sleep. So when we were trying to coordinate, like, to do the podcast, she's like, hey, I'm going on my annual tour. So for civilians in the reserves, you hear the 2 weeks a year, 1 week in a month thing. And so her 2 weeks was in the reserves was coming up. And I was like, oh, you must be looking forward to sleep. She's like, yes. So no,
That's amazing.
Laura Balo, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So I kind of gave your backstory because it really is impressive. But can you talk to us about how you actually kind of got into, like 15 years ago, how you started with all this?
So I joined the military. So I was in high school, and I got out of high school. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. So I started working at a correctional facility, the state prison in Texas, and as a correctional officer.
Wow.
And then figured that I didn't want that to be my whole life. So I decided I wanted to see more than good old just West Texas. And so I joined the military, joined the Navy active duty. So I was for 6 years active duty. Decided I wanted to expand my family. Didn't know it was going to expand as much as it did. So got off active duty and went to college, started my career. And then I just happily accidentally fell into Veterans Court. I had no idea what it was, never had heard of it before I started as a Veterans Peer Network. Which actually brought me over to Central Texas from West Texas. I was ready for a change, put in some random applications and found the Veterans Peer Network and loved it. Loved working with the justice involved veterans. It was I just saw such great, amazing things come out of it. So I knew that I had to work in actually hands-on Veterans Court. So as soon as opportunity popped, I jumped at it.
Hey, Laura, just for our listeners, what was your specialty in the Navy when you were active?
So when I was active, it was a communications technician. In the Navy, it's called interior communications electrician. But then when I got off active duty and went into the reserves, I became a legal man. So basically a paralegal for all the JAGs.
Okay. I can kind of see a little bit of the connection then with what you're doing today.
Yeah, exactly.
It was definitely a happy accident.
Yeah, and you've done a lot of different angles within the system, which is impressive.
Yeah, it's kind of strange how it all. I've never actually had this is how it's going to be. It's just always kind of happened that way. So I originally was a correctional officer, and then when I got off active duty and got my degree, my actual first job was with CPS, Child Protective Services, as an investigator, and then I kind of fell into the Veterans Court portion. So it's kind of it's never been something I'm just like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. It just kind of fell into place. So, and I love it though. I wouldn't change any of it, minus the Child Protective Services.
I don't know what the terminology is, Laura, but I think our destiny, our future meets us where we're at. So I mean, you've done some things, whether you sought them or not. An opportunity presented itself. You said yes, you did them, and it just kind of prepared you then for the next endeavor. And now here you are, and Donna, became aware of this Veterans Court process and then educated me. And it's what led us to begin doing this series because we think it's such a unique thing. We know it's not only here, it's everywhere. But
most counties have them in the US.
Yeah. But it's unique, I think, that I had not heard of it prior to. So it's really fun getting to hear your story, and we're getting to hear soon, your role inside of all of this.
Yeah. What, we'll get to what you do right now, but out of all the different jobs that you've had, which one in the Veteran Court was your favorite or has been?
So when I was the coordinator or the case manager, it was very similar to basically what I'm doing now. What I'm doing now is just more inclusive. So as a case manager, I just work directly one-on-one with the veterans. Now I'm more of pretty much everything. I handle the grant funds and also getting the veterans in. So I'm kind of more of doing all the switching up of everything. But so I just love being able to work with the veterans one-on-one, figuring out how to help them and doing so. I love that part of it.
That's neat.
We've interviewed, a couple people so far, and we've got a couple more to go, that all throughout the Comal County Veteran Treatment Court. And it's interesting because you can tell, even though we're interviewing you guys separately, that there is a lot of passion there, and you seem like to have a very good team, and Judge Stevens and Mike Fogarty were constantly teasing each other about who got interviewed first and who gets to go first. And, it's nice. It's nice to see that something that's really tough, because that is tough when somebody's been, doing their thing and then they run into rough times and they make some really bad decisions. It's nice to know that there's a team there that really does have their best interest. So it's refreshing,
Yes, I love working with the team, because to me, it's just such a great opportunity to get all different mindsets and mind frames and perspectives on different things, and bringing them all together and coming up with a plan for one individual. I mean, it's this program, and the court is such individualized, and that's what I love about it the most. One shoe doesn't fit all. It fits all different sizes and shapes and backgrounds and all of those things. And so that's what I love about our team, and every team I'm sure that's out there, is that just having all those perspectives coming in at once. And
I love that you said that, Laura, that it's not one thing fits all, right? Because there's this mentality. I experienced this in my Air Force career. Maybe you have too, but you sometimes hear things. I'm going to just paraphrase. It's not necessarily the exact way it would have been said, but hey, what's the going rate for? Like somebody makes a bad choice, and it's like there's this set, predetermined, this is the way to adjudicate that.
Yeah.
And hearing you say that, it sounds like you all are truly taking in the individual, the unique circumstances to that individual, and the case in and of itself.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about the Veterans Treatment Program in general. Just, I love that it's not, a check the box kind of thing. Like, oh, he got arrested for this, now this is his punishment. Like, no, It's more to that. There's a background and a backstory and
the why
life that is behind that decision. So let's go from there.
Yeah, the why behind it, because her why and his why and her why are all different. Why?
The circumstances too, right? I mean, the things we've experienced individually,
how we respond because of it. Oh my
goodness, yeah.
Yeah, and when you have people that are reacting versus responding, and that's where the bad decisions come in. And
I've never done that.
Anyway,
me either.
We're all being honest here.
Well, okay, I'm glad I got two angels in.
Yeah.
Where the horns? My life is a happenstance, and crap.
Yeah.
All rolled in.
We're all
I promise you, same.
Yeah. Me too.
But my brother said this. I said this on another podcast. He referred somebody to me that was he's writing his story, and he's like, Donna, talk to him. And I said, okay. So and he's not a veteran, but he ended up making some bad choices, ends up in jail, and comes out of it. And so my brother and I were talking, and he says to me, the only difference between him and I was like, you didn't get caught? He goes, exactly. He's like, that's the difference. I made really bad choices too.
I think that's real and should sink home with everyone.
Right? Oh, absolutely.
We've probably all done things.
Absolutely. And you just bite your nails a little going, ooh.
Yeah.
So
hey, I'm sorry, real quick. Laura, I should know this. I'm just going to declare to our listeners, my naivete. This is a paid position for you, or are you a volunteer?
No, it's a paid position.
Okay. All right. So this is your career outside of when you're fulfilling service to your country, right, as a Navy reservist. So appreciate that. Yeah, but when you started out, Laura, did you start from a place of just, I'm volunteering, I'm giving my time, this is something I believe in?
Yes. So when I first heard of the Veterans Court, like I said, when I first got into the Veterans Peer Network position, I didn't know that Veterans Court existed. And so when I came across it, I was just dumbfounded at what an amazing program that is out there that can help. So I was all about volunteering. How can I help? How can I make it better? And then when the opportunity came up that a paid position came up, I said, yes, please. So
I love that. And Laura, the reason I asked that, it's because Donna and I have spent a lot of time speaking to our listeners, trying to say to them, it's okay to not know what you want to do. But you know what? If you have a heart to serve and help others, particularly other veterans, you may end up uncovering something that lights your soul on fire, right? That just gives you life. And I hear that from you. I see that. That's what Donna's kind of shared with me about you, all of you that are involved in this. So you started off as a volunteer, found something you just really love, and look what happened later. So that's why I wanted to draw that out, Laura.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like when that I never saw myself doing any of this. And so, but it definitely, like you said, lit a fire in me. I definitely believe 100% in this program. It's not just because I'm getting paid. I believe it. I believe that it works for the people who want it to work. And I believe that all the team believes that too. We all are here because we truly want better for everybody. And it's just, I love it. I love that all the team, and it's just great.
How does this, like, you're a paralegal in the reserves, and how do I know that there's a lot of cross skills in there, and when you're at your reserve, I mean, I don't know how I'm saying this, like, are you able to kind of educate people? Like, you have a little more foresight. Like, let me give you an example. My daughter is a little bit on a sassy streak right now. She loves, she's almost 12, and she loves coming back with the sarcasm, which I don't want to, hinder, and you can be witty and all that, but reading the room is kind of important. And so she hasn't been reading rooms lately. And recently her teacher, I don't remember the comment, but it was a little witty. And the teacher's like, oh, okay, Miss Hoffmeyer, well, you can come into the study hall with me. And she's like, oh. And I said
AKA detention. It's called detention in my day.
It's nice. It's probably like a positive way to say detention, right? And so I just said to her last night, I said, listen, I said, you're 11 and this little frontal brain isn't fully developed, and you can't foresee because you don't have enough experience behind you. But I am telling you, as your mom, who is also a little witty sometimes, that I can foresee that if you keep going in this direction, hanging out with your teacher is going to be the least of your problems. And so, do you translate over when you're in your reserve job, like looking at these guys and like maybe, and girls, but mentoring or advising or dropping a little hint?
Absolutely. It's funny that you say that. So, I was just on my annual training in Bahrain, and I was kind of doing administrative separations for people who are kind of not doing on the right path in the military.
Yeah.
And so I got an opportunity to talk to one of them, and I was mentioning, I get that, military might not be for everybody, and this might have not been your end goal, but you might want to think when you get out of making sure that you're on the right path. Like, do you have a plan when you get out? Because at this point, the administrative separation was inevitable and he was going to be removed from the military. Do you have a plan? What's your plan? I definitely kind of studied and said, because this is what I do in my civilian life, and I would hate to see you. I don't want to see you in that capacity.
That's true.
So let's get it figured out now. He had gotten into trouble with some drugs in the military. So, figure this out now, get help, because it's not going to get any better when you get out. I assure you, unless you choose to make the right choices.
I just had to reflect back to you sharing a story about your daughter, though. You said she's kind of in this sassy place right now. And I was about to say, so she's modeling after what she sees. I'm just kidding. But you are witty. That's true. You are witty. And
I'm trying to read the room a little bit.
No, 100% you do. I'm just having fun. But I think that was such a great question to Laura, because Laura, you are in that position to have a little deeper insight into, and sometimes we don't. That's one more thing, right? From an emotional maturity, I call it emotional intelligence. One more thing we don't sometimes think of. In the moment, this is what's going on, but there could potentially be some long-term consequences to these things. And I would much rather have somebody in my life who cares about me enough to sit me down and say, maybe we should talk, right? Are you aware of that? Or do you have a plan for?
Well, and what I see too, because so when I was in the military, I was a nurse, and my last 7-8 years, I worked kind of at a headquarters. I kind of do like what you did, but I do it on the clinical side. So I was technically a case manager, but I worked like at a headquarters level. So we helped manage their care into the hospitals or wherever they needed it, and try to pave the path so they could get the care, And what I started seeing over and over was when they were getting told, hey, you might be going through an MEB, which at least they get some financial compensation for it, but the military is saying we're done, right? And they would go through grieving, essentially. They would get so angry. And so if you catch them at the point that they're angry and they're separating, that's a dire consequence, because what they don't realize is that when they get out, this is all going to catch up with them and bite them harder. And so for me, I was lucky in a way with them, because I had them for sometimes a year or two, and they would go through this grieving process, and they would go through the denial and then the anger, and they go through all these stages, and finally they get to a point where they're like, okay, I'm ready. And then they would start looking forward. And when you started seeing them kind of come to grips with it is when you could really start working with them, saying, what is your game plan? And these guys were scared. And I say guys loosely, I mean women also. They were scared to death, right? Because they're like, I'm the breadwinner. Oh, I'm a police in the military and I'm a police in the civilian side. I'm about to lose my entire identity and my paycheck that goes with that, by the way. How am I going to feed my family, pay the bills, take care of them? I mean, and when I say emasculating, I mean that in the male energy way. We're emasculating these people and we're taking away their identity. And then the military is like, hey, I'm sorry, you are no longer retainable. Off you go have a good career, future, whatever you're going to do, right? It's the people within the military, like yourself, Laura, that are like, whoa, Tiger, before you step out that door, let's get some game plans, because I'm out there and I'm just telling you, you got some work to do.
Right, exactly. And I also let them know in those types of situations where we're scared and they don't know exactly. There are so many opportunities out here as well. I mean, yes, the military is I always kind of put it as like the military is always like a great like comfort zone, right? But when you're not in that bubble where there's so many opportunities. Break out of that bubble and you can go nowhere but up. I mean, there's so many opportunities. You just have to look for them. Yes. And so be excited. It's not always a bad thing.
That's right. Look for the good, right? There is good.
I have a question. What is your day-to-day look like? Like when you say you're the coordinator, so when Judge Stevens says, oh, Laura's the coordinator, I thought you managed all their schedules. I went to you first. I'm like, can they come to the podcast? Like, Mom.
Kind of. Yeah, no. So my role is to find the veterans who need this court. So from the very beginning, so I try to get them when they're first arrested. So in the jails, there are forms to fill out that say like, are you a veteran? So if they self-identify as a veteran, I get notified, hopefully, that there was a veteran arrested. So then I kind of talk to them if their case or if they're arrested, what they're arrested for kind of fits our profile, because we're only a misdemeanor court.
Right.
So if it's a felony or higher, there's not much I can do, but I can always refer them to services like, are you veteran, VA eligible? Let's get you some service. Are you homeless? So I can kind of look at those things and point them in the right direction in that aspect. But I get them hopefully when they're arrested, get the case kind of pushed along quicker because they are a veteran and they could potentially come into veterans court. And then, get them in the right steps to come into veterans court. So you have to, fill out application, and your case has to be approved by the district attorney's office, and those types of steps. And your attorney has to allow you to be able to come into vet court too. That's part of my job. And then the other part of my job is once they're in, kind of scheduling the court hearings, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing on a not probation level. So, the probation officer makes sure that they're doing all of their probation skills, but I'm making sure in life, how are you doing? Is your job going well? Is your personal life going well? If not, how can we help you? In those type of aspects, just kind of like the all around, how is everything? Just making sure everything, and then scheduling everything for the purposes as well.
I have a question inside of that, Laura. First, I wanted to acknowledge to our listeners, I don't know if they can pick it up through the podcast, but in my studio where we're at, we're probably 6 miles as a crow flies from an Air Force base. Yeah. And they're logging their sorties today, right? So the sound of freedom is evident today outside the window.
There's also they're doing a POW MAA event
are
today
they really?
also.
Oh,
so
that would probably
there's
be
formation flying going on.
That would be what we're hearing.
Yes.
Laura, my question to you is this. Love, again, thank you for what you're doing for our veterans. In particular, I love that you said we want to find out as quickly as we can. The earlier in the process, the better. I love that you clarified it's misdemeanor cases that the Veterans Court can oversee. If someone identifies on a form as a veteran, do you all do diligence to truly validate whether that person is? Because we all know, and I think it's a very, very small number, but we all know there are cases of stolen valor, right? Where someone tries to take credit for something they did not do. So how do you all verify?
So we have a veterans officer. Their title is Veterans Justice Outreach Officer. So we verify with them, and then there's also a system called VRSS, and I don't ask me what it stands for because I have no idea. But they also do verification that they are veteran status, and so we kind of go off those. And we also require to come into the court. We have to have a DD-214 or a VA form, something like that, because we are grant funded.
Do y'all look then, Laura, as a follow-on to that, when you get someone's 214 or any other kind of information, do y'all look for patterns that may already exist out there, right? If this person is starting to show that they have repeatedly made poor choices, let me say that. Praying that's not true, but I assume there could be some. Do y'all look at that differently or still the same criteria?
No, absolutely. For me, when I look at their DD-214, I immediately look at their discharge code and see what they're discharged for. And I would say more oftentimes than not, they get out with some sort of drug or alcohol offense that they had gotten removed from the military. So most of the time, I would say, obviously there are some that went through their career and did fine, but a lot of the times I notice, and for me, sometimes in the real world, whenever you're talking to people and you say, oh, did you got out honorably? Oh, it's other than. It's such a bad thing. For me, that is not a bad thing because it shows that you obviously needed help. You didn't get that in the military. I'm sure that they might have tried, but you didn't get it then. And you have a pattern of something going on. That shows that you need this court more than anything.
How many times that you just said something that's making little red flags go off on me? How many times when you get them out and when you receive them and they have a drug or alcohol related incident, how many times do you find out the why behind that is related to PTSD or some kind of mental health issue? And they're using it as coping.
Yeah, I would say almost every single time. It would be rare that it's not.
Okay, so this is a very interesting situation. So me being in the military and working with these guys in the military, there is actually a rule, and it's called, of course I'm blanking out, but they can go into a dual status where, well, you probably, I don't know if you know this, legal, you should, I guess, where they, if it is alcohol, drug related, and they can say that's connected to the mental health issue, they should be medically boarded. They should not be separated.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not often the case. I don't think, at least I have not seen it that way. Most of the time it's like drug or alcohol rehabilitation failure.
Right. So what they'll do, and I've seen this too many times to count, they will take somebody that is drinking, and we'll just use that for an example, and then they're like, oh, you didn't come to work, and oh, we found you drunk in your room, ADAP. So they send them to ADAP. And let me just tell you, it ain't going to be successful. Why? Because they need a dual diagnosis program, because the drinking isn't the why, the PTSD or the mental health or whatever is the why. And so I have come into so many of these cases, it's sickening. And they're like, oh, they failed ADAP. I'm like, of course they did. You didn't put them in the right program. Let's go do the right program. And they're like, oh. And so when that happens and there's nobody there to like kind of cut in between that, this is what happens. Now they get sent out the door and they're left. And then here we are with a high number of people that end up in veteran treatment court. Super frustrating to me.
Yes, I agree. That, and then also whenever they, if they test positive on a UA in the military, it's an automatic removal. Well, I say automatic, most of the time automatic removal if they're eligible for separation board.
They're supposed to go back through their medical record. They're supposed to connect. So there's a I don't know if it's DOD level. I think it's DOD level, but guidance where, let's say the best example I was given, let's just say you test positive for crack and you have asthma, right? They're not related. You know what I mean? But if you tested positive for crack and you had PTSD and there's a correlation on when this started. Now, if you were using crack from day one in the military and somehow could hide it, that's probably not related to the PTSD. But if they correlate that with when the PTSD was roughly, they can find the point of when it started, they are not supposed to be removing them at all. They are supposed to be medically boarding them. And I see the military use it as a foul all the time.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Just to backtrack, you said UA. Sometimes our listeners, I think some of them aren't all veterans, and we three know, but just to clarify, urine analysis test, I assume you mean, right? UA.
Yes.
So those are, routine things that any serviceman or woman knows they can be subjected to at any given time.
Yeah.
And so that is one more, hopefully, boundary in place that is intended hopefully to keep people making better choices, right? But you never know.
We weirdly always got tested. They always said it was random, but I don't know. You go to Amsterdam.
Right when you come back.
Yeah. Randomly
I randomly, that happened to me numerous times,
Yes.
Funny.
I have been randomly selected many times.
Hey, here's my question for you, Laura. Your heart's already been on display. You've talked about how much you thoroughly enjoy what you do. What breaks your heart when it comes to this program? What is it that, maybe it's infrequent, but what do you find most challenging about what you do?
A veteran who fails out of the program, meaning that they are just not on board with getting help. No matter how much we shove it down their throat, they just don't swallow it. They just won't, they don't get the help they need, unfortunately.
They don't take an active participative role.
Right. So like, for example, I had not here in Comal County, in another county, in Hays County, when I was working there, we had an individual and he was a really bad alcoholic, really bad. They had told him that his kidneys, if he continued on and he was young, he was only, I want to say 34, 33. and they told him if he continued, his liver would quit. And he wanted it. He wanted help. He begged for it. So it was a disease, and so he just couldn't get it under control. So we finally, after many attempts of inpatient treatment and all of those things, and he was doing so well. So usually the program is around 12 months. He had been in it almost 2 years, and he was doing so well. He had a great job, was sober, was living with his girlfriend. I mean, it was just such a great, all these things. He was homeless whenever he came into the court, jobless, it was horrible. So he'd done just great things while in the program. And he was only like 2 weeks from graduation, relapsed and died. He got into a car accident. He had a car accident and died. And that was absolutely heartbreaking because he had worked so hard. Yeah. And I put my heart into it. I mean, I really do. I care about these individuals very much. I care about their well-being. I want them to succeed and do well, do great things in life, all the things that they want. So when I see something like that, or someone who just cannot get the help they need, then it's heartbreaking for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a tough one. I've seen that quite a few times.
I think the success rate, though, Laura, for you all, for what you're doing, it's really high. That most of them appreciate somebody being so thorough and helping to untangle, is the word I'll use, some of these things, and then give them that second chance.
Yes.
That the vast majority of people who you all agree to bring into the program finish the program and go on to be successful.
Correct. Yes. A very high percent. I want to say it's like 96%.
That's awesome.
People complete it, and for 2 years after do not get rearrested. So the recidivism is very low.
Amazing.
What's your, do you know roughly what your percentage of officers versus enlisted is?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, like the exact percentage, but I would say I would say probably 98% enlisted, and very rare. I've only seen a few officers come through.
But let's be real about that for the three of us sitting here too. The numbers on the enlisted side far outstretch the number of officers in any of the services, right? Yeah. So it's a disproportionate number to begin with.
Yeah, well, realistically, yes. Yeah.
I just say that because if we have listeners again who aren't veterans, who don't understand, could form a perception of them. Man, those people. Well, wait a minute. Right? It's No, it happens on both sides. The three of us know that there are people on both sides of the equation that make poor choices at times.
I've never made one.
I will say even too that even the amount of officers that I even see in general, like on a daily basis, are very few anyway, where I meet hundreds of enlisted and very
a
random officer on the street.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what do you think?
No, it's really good, Laura. I do have something I'll close with. I put it out the other day, and I thought of it, and Laura, I use quotes a lot. Not just on the podcast. I mean, it's who I am as a human being. If I read something and it resonates with me, I share it with others. If it's really meaningful, I hang on to it, and it will crop up from time to time. So in light of what we three were just talking about, this is something I put out on one of my social channels just the other day. It's from Jocko Willink, who is a former Navy SEAL. And he said, you ultimately become who you are based on your choices, right? So
I saw that.
We've all made poor choices. The three of us have said, we've all done that for sure. Mm-hmm. This is an opportunity. The Veterans Court, the systems that are in place around the country, in the counties here in Texas, it's an opportunity to recognize that some of what we experience in the military is very unique. Right? Trauma is real. Post-traumatic stress disorder is real. There are often mitigating circumstances that should be considered. I'm not saying they always warrant it or always get it, but Laura, as we start to wrap this up, I just want to say to you, I'm so thankful for all of you. Appreciate your heart, appreciate you standing on point, still serving our country. You're serving them in two ways, in my opinion, both in your direct service in uniform as a reservist, and then two, still serving because you're still taking care of our nation's veterans. So thank you is really how I wanted to wrap up. I appreciate everything you are doing, you all are doing as a team.
Thank you. And I appreciate it so much. And truly, I don't think that any one of us, including the veterans, would be as successful as we are or will be without support of everybody, every individual that walks by and says to any veteran, thank you for your service or thank you for what you do. I think that that's such a helpful, kind of tool to push along and give us pride. And so thank you for your support and also your service. So I appreciate that.
I think that's one thing that part of the reason we do this podcast is to make people aware. And when I say people, I mean the civilians aware of why they're saying thank you. Mm-hmm. Because, it's easy. I mean, when I used to go, into the grocery store, and I would rarely go in my uniform because it's Texas. And I know this sounds weird, but I can't get through a grocery store without, I had little kids come up to me and adults, and it was very, very kind. I need my groceries though.
Yeah. So, thanking you for
the absolutely thanking you. And that is great. Sometimes there's a part of me that wanted to say, why are you thankful? Not because I didn't love the thank you, but it's the why behind it. And I wanted people to really understand what they were saying thank you for, because you're right. We are the same reason we are in these environments. This is how we defend our country. I mean, we have to be in these austere environments, sometimes toxic environments. We are doing things that nobody else wants to do, that's for sure. And we're seeing things that nobody else should ever see, that nobody period should see. Mm-hmm. But we're doing it because that's what it takes to defend our country. And we do it willingly, right? We give of ourselves. And so if you're not in those shoes, I'm glad you say thank you. I'm very thankful when civilians come up and say that, but I want them to understand exactly and get the best feel that they can on why they're saying thank you, so.
Laura, what other thoughts from you? Was there something that, as we stepped into this space together today, you kind of thought, this is an important part that I want to make sure is mentioned, or something that's weighed on your heart since we stepped in that maybe just didn't naturally, organically come out in our conversation? Anything else you want to share?
No, nothing comes up, but I just want to implore all of the listeners, if anyone's listening, and if you know there's like veterans court around or any type of veterans organizations, and if you have a heart for it, volunteer. Man, it just does so much for not only the people that you're helping, but also yourself. You just feel great. It's like such an awesome, it's such a great thing to help out. So,
and on that note, when she says volunteering in Comal County specifically, they have a mentor program. And so if you go volunteer, you are actually become a mentor to one of the veterans in the treatment court. And we talked about this on a previous podcast with Judge Stevens, that is a private conversation between the mentor and the veteran. And it is not privy to anybody in the court system. That is between them. And it stays that way for a reason, because they need that to be able to just release their emotion.
Yeah. And so mentors needed, do it with a servant heart, men and women. But I think we've also discussed previously, there is a tremendous need for women veteran mentors, right?
Yes, there is. So
this time. So
how many?
One veteran mentor, female.
Yeah. And how many women are in the court on average? You don't have to give us numbers now, but
usually on average between 2 and 3.
Okay. Yeah.
One time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there you go. Right?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a need out there to our listeners. Again, this is probably true no matter where you're listening from, but certainly we're speaking here in the Central South Texas area. There is a need. And if you have a servant heart and you want to get involved to do good for others, this is an opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm going to leave you guys with this thought. And I was just looking at this quote. It says, we expect our our soldiers to fight our battles, right? To defend our country. But later on, we should support them when they fight theirs. So, in our civilian population, when you see these veterans struggling and you're not sure what to do, just hey, want to go for coffee or how are you doing can go a really long way.
Yeah.
So you never, ever know when your interaction is going to be one that kind of maybe turns them around to a new direction or gives them a new thought or a new light.
Yeah.
So, all right, ladies and gentlemen.
Good stuff.
We are going to wrap this up. Laura, thank you so much for being on our podcast. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. And for everybody that's listening, we are always thankful. We love it when you guys engage with us. If you have any comments or thoughts, please give them over to Coming Home Well. We get all the messages. And on behalf of Coming Home Well and our podcast, Beyond the Front Line, we hope you have a wonderful week.
Take care, everybody. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Front Line, a podcast of Coming Home Well. Join us every other Wednesday. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well.